system. No, I must place the union in proper perspective for people to understand.
Hello and welcome to the program. Now, the death toll in the meningitis outbreak in northwest and north central Nigeria has risen dramatically and spread to other parts of the country. As at the last count we made, the total number of deaths from the disease was 337, with a total of 3,019 suspected cases reported. Now, that figure might have changed as you are watching us right now, but health authorities in the country say 146 of the suspected cases have now been confirmed following a laboratory test. They are also warning that the bacterial disease could spread to neighboring countries. From December last year, when the first suspected case of the disease was reported in the northwest Zamfara state, the meningitis outbreak has spread like wildfire. In all, 6 states and the Federal Capital Territory, as well as 92 local government areas, have been affected. But worst hit has been Zamfara state, that's Zamfara now, as well as Sokoto and Katsina state, all in the northwest of the country, where 93% of the cases have been reported. Now, these 3 states border Niger Republic, and that is generating serious concerns of international border transmission, especially when you consider how porous our borders are in that region. Health authorities say part of the reason for the huge death toll and rapid spread of the disease is because it's a new type of meningitis known as serotype C, and that the vaccine for this type of meningitis is not commercially available. Now, let me quickly break all of this down so that you can get a perfect understanding of how serious the situation is and why everything must be done to stop the spread of this deadly type C meningitis. And let me just turn to the table now. There you have the 6 states. As a matter of fact, 6 states affected. Now, when you add the Federal Capital Territory, it means we're talking about 7 places affected. But then, look, beyond this table, we've also seen deaths in some other states where, some other states now that are not on this table. And as we've told you, Zamfara state is the worst affected. Zamfara state has 14 local government areas, and all 14 local government areas are affected. So you have this outbreak in the 14 local government areas of Zamfara state. And the problem with Zamfara state is that the meningitis there is the type C meningitis, as a serotype C meningitis that we understand. The vaccine, of course, is not commercially available, even though the government is making effort to secure these vaccines. We understand 500,000, of course, have been sent, of these vaccines now have been sent to Zamfara state, and the hope is that rapid vaccination will continue. And look at the number of affected persons in that local government area, in Zamfara state, 1,846. And the number of deaths, of course, 216. Now, the problem here is that these figures are actually official figures, because there are certain cases, of course, that would not be reported. There are certain cases of people who would fall ill, they wouldn't go to the hospital, and so their data will not be captured. So, beyond these figures, the number could be far, far higher than this, because you look at Zamfara state, it's a rural state, and quite a number of the people who are infected are in the rural areas. So some of them do not have access to hospitals. They do not go to hospitals. Some of them resort to treating the illness locally because they do not understand it. And so that set of people now will not be captured in this figure. But officially, this is a figure we have. 14 local governments in Zamfara state, all 14 local governments affected. The number of cases reported, 1,846. Now, this figure was as at April the 3rd. So there's a possibility it has actually changed. And then the number of deaths, 216. There's also a possibility that the number of that death, talking about the official figure now, has gone up. Now, coming close to Zamfara state is the neighboring state of Sokoto. Don't forget, Zamfara state was actually created out of Sokoto state. In Sokoto state, 17 local government areas affected. The number of cases there, 662. And then as at the 3rd of April, 41 persons have died of the meningitis. That's a huge number. And of course, as we've been told, most of these cases are the type C meningitis, because fact is that type A meningitis has always been known to affect this area, because we understand these states. Talk about Zamfara State, Sokoto State, Katsina State. They are all in the meningitis belt, as we understand. And so it's always been there. Every year at about this period, meningitis actually strikes that area. And the people there have actually been vaccinated. That's for the type A meningitis. But before now, nobody in that area, nobody in the zone had been vaccinated from the type C meningitis. And that is why we understand this latest serotype of meningitis is killing people rapidly. Then you go to Katsina State, where the president comes from. Your 12 local government areas affected there. As at April the 3rd, there's a possibility that the number has gone higher than that, because if you look at the mode of transmission, very fast by air. So the disease is highly transmissible. And then you have this problem of overcrowding in some of these areas. So it's just, people will say such conditions are fertile ground for the transmission of this disease. And in Katsina, you have 211 cases and 46 deaths. And then Kebbi State, you have 13 local governments affected, 69 cases reported, and 11 deaths. And then Niger State. Niger State is actually in the north central of the country. All this while, it had always affected the northwest. And now we are seeing the disease move to the north central of the country. And if it's moving to the north central of the country, there's every possibility that it could move to other parts of the country as well. The northeast, of course, cannot be excluded. There's every possibility that it could move in there, especially when you consider the situation in the northeast, where displaced people are crammed into camps, and then they live in very squalid and horrible conditions. I mean, those are fertile grounds for the transmission of the disease. But in Niger State, 5 cases reported as at the 3rd of April, 93 deaths, 93, as a matter of fact, cases reported, 5 local government areas affected, and then the number of deaths recorded, 33. And 33 is quite high when you consider the fact that only 5 local government areas are actually affected in that state. Now, that number could have gone up. Now, let's look at the Federal Capital Territory. We're talking about the federal capital of Nigeria. 2 cases have been reported there. Two local government, 2 local municipal councils now have been affected, and then 5 cases reported, and there's been 1 death, of course, recorded. And guess what? This is what nobody actually expected. We're beginning to see this disease move from the north of the country, where it is actually common, to the south of the country. I'm talking about the south of the country now. Look at Cross River State in the south of the country. We understand, as a matter of fact, forget this number, the number of cases we understand that have been actually reported there is around 23 actually. And of course, we understand 1 person has been confirmed dead. So you look at the total number now, just look at, this is not properly arranged, but the total number, of course, total number of deaths so far is 353. Now, that number might have changed, but let me take you to another table now, just to give you a further sense of how widespread, this bacteria is. I'm talking about the meningitis disease now, that, beyond those states we have mentioned, we've also had the disease in places, and this time not the type C meningitis anyway, but we've had it in places like Lagos. Look at number 13 here. Lagos, of course, a metropolitan city, a mega city at that. 1 local government affected, 3 cases reported. Of course, none has been confirmed, but then 2 deaths, of course, and that is actually horrible. So, it's not the kind of disease you want in Lagos. When you consider the population of Lagos, you consider the fact that that in some places here, people live in jam-packed, houses, rooms, and what have you. So if something is not done, and probably the type C meningitis gets here, the death toll would, of course, be catastrophic. And then let's take a look at another state now. That's in the north central, Plateau State. There you have it. You have 1 local government affected, 4 cases reported there. Of course, no deaths. no death, of course, no case confirmed from the laboratory, but it's also a problem that one case has been confirmed, because even one case, one case is as dangerous as, 10 cases, if you like, because from this one, it could just spread. But altogether, the number of reported cases altogether we've had so far, 3,019, and as we told you earlier, 92 local government areas affected. The number of lab confirmed cases, because some of these cases now are suspected cases. Now, a suspected case is different from a confirmed case. Now, one might have the symptoms of the meningitis, but you never can know you have meningitis until your samples have been taken, blood samples, for instance, have been taken, and then a lab test has been conducted, and and the confirmation comes out. So in this number of cases, that the number of suspected cases now 3,019, the number of confirmed cases is 146. Now, you may think that is small, but actually that's quite high, because you never can tell how many of these cases will eventually turn out positive results after the lab test is done. But then look at the number of deaths we've recorded, 337. That's quite high. It's really high. It's very disturbing. Now, recently we visited Zamfara State, which is the worst hit by the disease. In particular, we visited Bungudu local government area, one of the affected places in the state, and which is just around 6 miles away from the state capital, Gusau. We were actually there to find out firsthand how the disease is ravaging actually the rural folks there. What we gathered is that all is actually not quite well. Take a look at this report now to get a sense of how serious the type C meningitis is in Zamfara State. Another victim of the cerebrospinal meningitis in a remote village in Zamfara State, northwest Nigeria. As young Nasiru writes in severe pain, his father and a relative watch helplessly, not knowing what to do. He's been rushed into this run-down primary health center in his village of Rawaya after he came down with a severe headache and consistent pain. The facility has no doctor in place, and the only medical personnel available tries to stabilize him with intravenous fluid. But it does not seem to be having any effect just yet. Nasiru's father is very scared he could lose his son. He says he has already lost 3 children to the same illness.
The illness comes with severe headache and stomach pain. I have lost 3 children to the same illness within this period. This is my 4th child that will come down with the same illness. We are appealing to the federal government to come to our aid. We need the right drugs to stop this disease because we are overwhelmed. Even yesterday, I took another patient to another hospital over the same illness. Honestly, we are tired of this.
a gaggauta shi ma don Allah muna neman gudunmawar gwamnati ta sa mana hannu mu a matsayin mu talakawa ga al'umma ta ashe mu a taimaka mana da magani domin mu ga an ciwo kan wannan matsala don gaskiya muna cikin halin kakanikai.
Almost every family around the village of Rawaya has been hit by the disease. The villagers simply don't know what it is. They are calling it a plague, as they have never experienced anything like it before.
Truth be told, our hospital here seriously lacks drugs. We are appealing to both the federal and state government to do something about this. We are calling on the federal government and the state government. For God's sake, they should help us so that we can overcome this plague.
The disease has now spread rapidly across Zamfara state. All of its 14 local government areas are now affected. The official number of deaths from the outbreak is now put at 216, while the number of suspected cases is now 1,846. There fears the actual number could be far beyond the official figures. part of the challenge is that rural health centers like this one, where Nasiru is being treated, lacks basic facilities and personnel to treat the disease. At the major health facility in the state capital, Gusau, the wards of the Federal Medical Center are filled with affected patients. And at the rate more patients are trooping in, the facility could get overwhelmed.
What we have had is a surge in the number of cases of cerebrospinal meningitis that have been brought here. Number of children affected has risen dramatically. I think we have quite a number on our children's ward now, and then increasing number of adult cases too have been presented to our accident and emergency units, and they are receiving treatment on the ward. This is usually the period where you have meningitis outbreak here. They'll present like malaria, fever, feeling unwell. A child is unable to eat, vomiting, and at times it may present as diarrhea. But what happens over time is that children begin to lose their energy. They may lose consciousness and present with neck stiffness. But most of the cases that came in to our hospital came in unconscious. And the good news is that many of them are responding well to treatment. In adults, it's also like that, but adults can easily notice that there's neck stiffness, so they'll present quickly, and by the time we examine them, conduct the necessary test, we find out that this is meningitis, and we take appropriate treatment.
Health authorities in the state say they are doing everything to check the spread of the disease, but admit that they were caught unawares by the type C strain of the meningitis.
The government has taken steps to control it, and the state government has provided enough drugs and personnel to cater for the outbreak. And the federal government also provide the vaccine for this meningitis, and I'm sure we have received first consignment and we are on it. Federal government has sent a team of doctors and also ill health and other partners to team up to arrest the situation.
The federal government has now sent in 500,000 doses of the meningitis vaccine to the state, and statewide vaccination has since commenced. But how quickly drugs and personnel get to the rural areas of Zamfara that have been worst hit would make a huge difference and save millions of lives. Now, the governor of Zamfara State, Abdulaziz Yari, who doubles as the chairman of the Nigerian Governors Forum, caused a stir recently with a bizarre explanation of the cause of the type C meningitis outbreak. Here is what he said. Let's take a listen. Not take a listen now. Let's take a look at the quote. Now, this is what the governor said. He said, quote, "What we used to know as far as meningitis is concerned is the type A virus. The World Health Organization, WHO, has carried out vaccinations against this type A virus, not just in Zamfara, but many other states. However, because people refuse to stop their nefarious activities, God now decided to send type C virus, which has no vaccination." Bizarre, if you ask me. Then he went on to say, "People have turned away from God, and he has promised that if you do anyhow, you see anyhow. That is just the cause of this outbreak as far as I am concerned. There's no way fornication will be so rampant and God will not send a disease that cannot be cured." End of quote. That quote, of course, coming from Governor Abdulaziz Yari, who is not just the governor of Zamfara State, but is also the chairman of the Nigerian Governors Forum. It's quite bizarre because it's not the kind of thing at all you'd expect of a governor. And the question is, if you have a governor saying this, how do you expect that governor now to be able to deal with this problem frontally and, of course, medically? It's a big headache. And, of course, this has been generating a lot of reaction across the country. And, of course, the Nigerian Medical Association has now waded in. Let us take a listen to what the head of that medical body has to say about not just what the governor of Zamfara State said, but how the federal government itself has reacted to this meningitis outbreak.
We also condemn the statement ascribed to one of our governors that CSM is a curse from God for people's fornication and adultery. NMA advises that our leaders should stay with their citizens to understand their plight and avoid unnecessary journeys outside the states they seek to govern. Long distance and numerous journeys have been highly associated with sexually transmissible disease and HIV/AIDS infection. CSM is an infection caused by Neisseria meningitidis bacteria and rampant with overcrowding and transmissible by air droplets. The NMA condemns in totality the reactive measures by the government on the epidemic, the delayed immunization of the citizens against an infection that is already established. This is ineffective based on the knowledge of the epidemiology of the disease. For immunization to be effective, it must have been given or administered around 3 months to the period of clinical manifestation of that infection. This is what we call the latent period. We want the National Center for Disease Control and other government agencies to be proactive in the approach to our emergencies.
Well, we'll take a short break now, and when we come back, we'll have an analyst, a medical practitioner, as a matter of fact, public health physician, join us to take a further look at this meningitis outbreak. Stay with us. Every day, every hour, and every minute, news break in Nigeria. Things happen so fast, it's most times difficult to track and comprehend them. But that's what we do right here on DEJI360. 2015, would you want to come back again?
It's like asking Jesus Christ if he knew he was going to die, will you want to come back as the savior of the world again?
We do not just help you track the stories, we break them down, explore all the angles, analyze the issues so that you can fully comprehend the stories and use them to make the right decisions.